Well, hello to all. In psychology, abnormal psychology, we've been going through these various chapters, and we've come up to the chapter of sexual dysfunctions, paraphilic disorders, and gender dysphoria. Now, that's quite a title there. We have the difference between dysfunctions and disorders and dysphoria, which we will go into. But first, I appreciate the assignments that you have been submitting. We're going along in the second half of the semester. Looking forward to December the 5th, because December the 5th, it's all over. But before it's all over, we have a little material to cover. And in chapter 10, we'll be talking about dysfunctions, and there are some really interesting aspects in dysfunction. Sexual dysfunctions. What is a sexual dysfunction? Who has a sexual dysfunction? One of the questions that's asked there is, what is normal sexuality? Well, we're going to go through this chapter, and we might find it very interesting when we answer the question, what is normal sexuality? As opposed to another way that could have been phrased is, what is normal sex? As opposed to, what is abnormal sex? Okay, so we have that behind. Now, I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want this to be an offensive chapter. I find it's a very interesting chapter because we have such a tremendous history connected with areas that are associated with sexual behavior. And even though we have a long history of sexual behavior in the various cultures that we have, throughout history, we still have a lot of similarities. If you recall, Freud made the statement that we are motivated by sex and aggression. Those are the two big motivators. And of course, there's individuals that, become very unhappy when they hear this. And having made that statement and that quote from Freud, like I said, I don't want to offend anyone. Take it with a grain of salt if you have to. Don't send the dirty old man police to arrest me, because I just want to discuss this chapter with you as it is. Then you can take it for what it's worth. I find that it is very interesting. We have quite a few studies in this chapter that we will be going over and looking at. And one of the things that we have to focus on is that the idea of sex and the practices of sex can change from culture, from ideology, from other beliefs that may come into an individual's life. This can change. And as far as what is normal sexuality, we won't say normal sex. What is normal sexuality? You're going to have to take this at a personal level, at a personal base. Because I don't believe that one person can say, okay, this right here, this material that I have in front of me is a guideline for normal sex. And so they come up with some type of memo, normal sex is. All right. I don't believe there's any such thing as really normal sex that can be put in a guideline that can go ahead and infer that all sex should follow this certain road map. I don't believe it. I think we have variations in sex, variations in sexuality pattern. If you don't want to use the word sex, we can say sexuality. So where we're going to start is looking at some of the cultures and some of the histories that we have. And if we go way back to the Greek time and Homer talking about Aphrodite being the goddess of intercourse, and she sprung from her father's castrated foaming testicles. So right there, we have a start that sex does play a role. Whether or not we like it, it does play a role in cultures, in human behavior. And this is basically what the Greeks thought. And of course, the Greeks had some interesting practices themselves. I have a couple of them jotted down here. They thought nothing of a homosexual partner, and they thought that this was just fine. And of course, when this took place, the wives were neglected. So along with this, we have what is called the island of Lesbos. And you can look this up, and the island of Lesbos is the name for lesbian. Now, supposedly we had individuals on the island of Lesbos who may have been bisexual, and because they were bisexual, this refers back to these individuals. So these are some of the things we can look at. We have the Greeks and the Romans, and all through this time with the Roman and with the other individuals, that they wanted a contraceptive, and they come up with different contraceptives, and probably the most prominent contraceptive at one time was a ball of wool wrapped up and inserted in the uterus that was kind of gummy. And at one time, that was considered to be very effective. Individuals focus on this, and I have to say that a common denominator of all cultures would probably be prostitution. I don't know of a civilization or a culture yet that didn't have prostitution as, I was going to say as a side activity, but that might be inappropriate to say side activity, and then someone becomes offended. No, don't become offended. Knock that off now. But anyway, cultures as a common denominator. Now, there may be other common denominators, but one of the main common denominators is prostitution. Now, we have the religious view, we have the Renaissance, where things started to change a little bit. The age of the Victorian age was really quite interesting, because that is basically the age that Freud grew up in. And of course, Freud said, hey, you guys are far too strict. And they couldn't even call at that time, at the day and age that Freud grew up in, they couldn't call a piano having legs or a table having legs. They had to be called limbs. Now, basically, this is somewhat carried through even in our culture until the 70s or 80s, when we have some type of a do-your-own-thing approach. And I don't know whether it would be a revolution or not, but anyway, we did have a change. Now, there's, in our culture here in the United States of America, you can walk through the grocery store, Walmart checkout, and the headlines on some of the magazines really say a lot about our culture. Of course, I realize that nobody reads these headlines. That's why they put the magazines there. Nobody reads them. I've never heard yet of anyone that reads any of the headlines. And yet we can see all of these headlines on them if you want to look, and you can get kind of a view of our culture. Now, this is our culture. Here in America, we think that we here in America, in the United States of America, that we have a controlling aspect on sex. And in the next video that I have, I'm going to talk about two cultures. One is Innis Bay off of the coast of Ireland, and one is the island of Mangaia, which is part of the Cook Islands. So that is where we will be starting the next video. Keep in mind, and keep an open mind on this. And I hope that no one is embarrassed. Again, I'll say it, no one is offended, but keep an open mind as we go through and we study the various sexual approaches that individuals have. And then somebody will say, sexual approaches, gee, what an unfitting term to use in the study of sex. Yeah, I know it. Forget it, because you'll probably hear some more of them. And so when we get into the next video, we will be talking about these two cultures along with the culture here in the United States. So until the next video then, you folks have a good day. Keep the assignments coming in. I know that you're doing a good job. And think about December 5th as being a great day in your life, and then you can celebrate that. So anyway, until the next video comes along, you have a good day.